Thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. It is our inaugural show, the first show ever in the new studio. My thanks to Ryan Northfield, who is just tremendously working around and all these wires and getting everything in its place, even up into the moment which we come on this show. So thank you, Ryan, for everything you're doing to make it work. And we just thank the Lord that we're in here. We thank Mac and Webcast One Live for making it possible for us to be here. We thank Crave, our sponsors, Christians Reviving American Values every day, Christians Reviving American Values, ChristiansForAmerica.com. We thank them for coming alongside and making it possible for us to bring you news you can use, the actual truth that you don't hear anywhere else. The mainstream media, they're too busy celebrating things that should concern most of us and treating pain and hardship as if it were something to be celebrated. So we're thrilled to be able to bring this to you. We're thrilled to be in our new studio. It's roomy, it's nice, it's beautiful, and it's only going to get better from here on out. We're coming into June. It's the first Wednesday in June, and this Saturday we'll be remembering D-Day, celebrating the Normandy Invasion, the beginning of the end of what many people refer to the beginning of the end of the war as we liberated Europe and securing freedoms for Americans and other countries around the globe. While those atrocities of the Holocaust were glaring, Hitler was exposed to be a vile and ruthless and deplorable human being willing to do horrific experiments on women, and young children. And that was exposed. And yet here in America, the very things we went across the seas to fight gave our men and women our blood to protect the lives of others. The very atrocities we went to stop were taking place here in America. And even some of those communistic teachings are now taught in our classrooms. But the horrific experiments that were taking place right on our children here by a diabolical villain who is somewhat exalted today in the world of academia and medicine. And if you've not heard the name, it's Alfred Kinsey. And if you start looking into any sex ed program in your public schools, and sometimes, unfortunately, into your Christian schools or private schools, you will find Alfred Kinsey's name somewhere. The work will go back to not the studies or the research or the teachings of Alfred Kinsey, but to the horrible and deplorable molestations of Alfred Kinsey on children. Some say 6 months old. Dr. Judith Reisman says 2 months old. Using prisoners, child molesters, as his pool of study. Michele Lentz of Child Protection League Action is joining me today. Hopefully we'll have Jim Sedlak from American Life League and Stop.org coming on a little bit later. We're still working through some of those new studio glitches, if you will. But Michele is the state coordinator for Child Protection League Action. She educates, she informs, she motivates, she activates, but she protects children from exploitation, indoctrination, and violence. And prior to this, she was an assistant to Minnesota State Senator Sean Nino. So we're so thankful to have her with her 23 years of experience in marketing and public relations and her ability just to really connect with the audience and help them understand the severity of the moment facing our children in public schools today. Michele, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Tamara. Thanks for having me on.
So I just spoke about the fact that any sex ed program in any public school, and unfortunately some Christian schools and many charter schools, will likely stem back to Alfred Kinsey. Am I correct in that?
Yes, he is the father of sex ed. And so all of the national sexuality standards that the public school uses, SIECUS, the organization that is usually the go-to organization for sex ed educators. These all base their curriculum and their information on the findings and the research of Alfred Kinsey.
And when let's go back to SIECUS, SIECUS, I'm trying to think, I've got it written down here somewhere in my book. Do you remember what the acronym is? SIECUS?
Sexual information, education, Council of the United States.
There you go. I think that's it. I think that's absolutely it. And let's just let our listeners know that it was a grant from Playboy, of all things, that established SIECUS. That gave them the money, funded them to start. So, gosh, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, but it tells you of which camp SIECUS even came out of. And since SIECUS has come into the schools, we've had, Michele, I would say nothing good come, nothing positive. And I would just say to our listeners and our viewers, look back on school the last 4 or 5 decades. Better now, better then. And the only difference is taking the Bible out and putting SIECUS in. Would you say that's accurate?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got this book in front of me. This is a very little book. Thin read, The Kinsey Corruption, an expose of the most influential scientist of our time. And I would say to you, get this book, folks. You can see how thin it is. It is an hour's read. You can read this, but you will have to probably put it down and take a break just because it is so frightening when you really get into this. Michele, when they talk about the findings, one of the things that really frustrated me here was that they suggested many of the parents do these experiments on their own children, and they did. And also it was nursery school personnel, preschool personnel were molesting children in the name of science.
I don't know what's worse, them doing it in the name of science and what we're seeing today, where people are just abusing children in the name of their own self-gratification. I don't know if you saw the article, I believe out of Florida, 101 people arrested in a sex sting operation, and 22 of that 101 were seeking sex with children. And that just happened this week. The problem is rampant in our country, and it's today. And it's an outgrowth of what Kinsey did, and the grooming of children and the breaking down of their innocent defenses by exposing them to material and conversations and stories that can be traumatic to them. And all of this is part of a bigger picture that is resulting in what we're seeing nowadays, which is at the other end of this pipeline of social ills in the United States: rape and trafficking and addiction to pornography. All of this stems from what Kinsey did,
and the exposure to children way too early. So I have right in front of me a story, I believe out of your state. Teacher takes students on field trip to adult novelty store. First off, why on earth would we be taking students of any age to a novelty adult store? But let alone, this is Minneapolis, and these students were middle school students. Took them to the Smitten Kitten last week. The interview I've seen, the teacher defends what she did, said it was wonderful to get to have these students in this environment. This is close to home for you, Michele.
Mm-hmm. It was an appalling story, and it caused a legitimate outrage in the public and with people in public policy. And I had a legislator talk to me just last night about seeing that story. And in Minnesota, we have obscenity laws that say that minors are not to be exposed to sexually explicit material, and then we exempt our public schools and our and other medical facilities and such from these obscenity laws. And so the threshold maybe for what is obscene, defined as obscene, is high. But the fact is, parents don't want their kids exposed to this stuff, and the the prevalence of this story now is, I think, going to draw attention to this fact that we are not protecting kids in schools, whether it's in curriculum, whether it's through the prevention of bullying laws and policies. And now in Minnesota, what we've been dealing with these inclusive transgender policies that allow a boy, for instance, who feels he's a girl to use the girls' bathroom. All of these things are increasing the exposure of children to material circumstances, experiences that their brains don't have the development, the maturity to handle like an adult would.
Couple of things. This teacher taking that student class, middle school class, to an adult bookstore. Same thing here in Iowa. We had 1,000 students. We hear 7th grade, we hear 8th grade, up to 12th grade, being told, many of them thought they were going to an anti-bullying conference, but it's been called the LGBTQ conference for several years. So, that's straight up what it was. But most students or adults didn't realize what was really being taught there, as students were told very graphic detail and instruction, oral to anal sex, and encouraged, Michele, to view pornography. Now, you and I probably will get into discussion here a little bit later on the dangers of pornography, the fact that it's tied to many serial murders, serial sex murders with the FBI and their interviews, the fact that it's tied to aggression, violence towards women and children. But the point being, exactly what we're talking about. And in this book, again, right on page 58, SIECUS actually urged school teachers to provide sexually explicit visual, printed, online materials for school children in order to reduce ignorance and confusion, their words, and to help children develop a wholesome concept of sexuality. Wholesome would not be the descriptive word I would use there. What we're doing is exploiting them, destroying we're desensitizing them and disrupting their normal, I would say, growth and development by exposing them to these situations too early. And this is not just Minneapolis. It's not just Iowa. In California, we've heard that students have apps on their phones. Thank you, Planned Parenthood, on how to hook up for the weekend. We've taken away the emotional, the bond, the relationship as God created it. Nothing more beautiful than the relationship between man and woman that God set forward in His example in the Bible. And now we have these kids as you say, Michele, hurting and wondering and questioning. And in fact, okay, so questioning, if I can just go to Massachusetts, I think it's called Mass Resistance, and they're talking about a survey that we have a similar survey here in Iowa, the Iowa Youth Survey, where they ask kids, this one's 7 to 12. I think Iowa Youth Survey is 5th, 8th, and 11th grade. They ask these kids questions that are really too young for them. This one says, I'm a transgender. I think of myself really a boy or a man. Or I'm a transgender. I think of myself as really a girl or a woman. Or I think of myself in some other way. Most of these kids may put, I don't know. They may mark I or E. I don't know if I'm a transgender. I don't know what this question is asking. And then, Michele, don't you think they could turn around and say, this many high school or junior high students are questioning their sexuality. They're questioning whether they're transgender. It's a great way, what we call a push survey, to get answers that really don't reflect accurately where our students are and make us think we need to do something different than what we should be doing. You're a little bit ahead of us in Minnesota. You've had a bullying bill, and you were the one that warned me. Bullying bills open up the opportunity for the Department of Justice to come into your school as a monitor. Explain that to us.
One of the precursors to that in Minnesota was that the Department of Justice and the United States Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights sued the largest school district in Minnesota, the Anoka-Hennepin School District, and they sued the school district for having what was a neutral policy regarding LGBT issues. And so the school remained neutral and encouraged those discussions to be taken place at home, and they didn't take a position on it. And the Department of Justice decided that that was creating a hostile environment, and they sued the Anoka Hennepin School District. What happened in the end is 19 lawyers basically descended on that school district, and they were afraid they didn't have the money to fight it. They caved in the end and signed about a 60-page consent decree, which then required the school to implement certain policies, and was put on probation for 5 years, which my understanding is at the cost of about $1 million a year. So this consent decree in the end cost the school district additionally $5 million over the course of that 5-year probation period. Right after that happened, then the legislature introduced what was called the Safe and Supportive Schools Act. We renamed it the Bullying Bill. And that bill was remarkably similar to the consent decree requirements. And so basically, it told all of the schools in the state of Minnesota that you have to have an anti-bullying policy, and you can have your own policy as long as it looks like the state policy. And that bill got a lot of feedback from the public. They were concerned about a number of provisions in that bill, one of them being that the bill, now the law, did not require schools to notify parents if their child was being bullied or being accused of bullying. And so the school can take remedial action against a student and never notify the parent. We weren't able to get that provision put in. It's just an egregious offense against parents and their rights. Getting to the question of why would a bullying law have anything to do with sex ed? In this law, it said that schools were encouraged, in the name of prevention of bullying, to teach children an understanding of human sexuality. And so this is where the two come hand in hand. And what we did in Minnesota is we said, well, what does that mean? How are they going to interpret this encouragement to teach human sexuality as a way of preventing bullying? And so we said, well, what do they do right now? And so we looked at one particular book that we were aware was a supplemental education resource called It's Perfectly Normal. We found it in 27 schools in the metro area, and that's just where we stopped looking. And the book said it was appropriate for 10-year-olds, and the pictures in the book are arguably obscene. And so if this is what they're using already, then our concern, and the concern that we shared with the legislature, was if you're going to expand this and now require or encourage schools to teach an understanding of human sexuality in every grade, in every subject, what door are we opening up here? And this was our concern, and this was the concern of thousands of parents across the state.
We've seen that book. You have that book. I have that book. And folks, if you haven't, it is online. You can do a search, but prepare yourself and make sure you don't have any children nearby, because Michele is right. It's absolutely pornographic. It's extremely detailed, far beyond what any 10-year-old needs to see. And even though it says it is for 10-year-olds. Okay, so folks, here's something you can do. Start checking in the school districts around you, finding out if they use that book. But Michele, how do they do that? Because I know you can call school districts and they'll tell you something that's not quite accurate. So how do they find out for sure if they're using that book in some fashion in their school districts?
I would suggest that people first call and talk to the school library and see if the book exists in the library or in the teacher's resource library. In some of these schools, the book existed in the teacher's resource library. That doesn't necessarily mean the teacher is using it. In some of these schools, we found the book in the student's library. And so that would be the first place to look. And it's not just sex education supplemental material. This is almost impossible for parents to get a handle on, because how are you going to go through and find out the books that are in the literature class? we found books in a couple of these schools where it was a parent who brought it to our attention that the book existed, was given to their child for summer reading or for part of their literature class, and the storyline contained extremely offensive material. And so I think it's very hard, but I think parents have to start right in their own schools. And this is why we need to strengthen our obscenity laws, because we can't wait for a child to be exposed to this material before we do something about it. We've got to start putting the pressure on the schools. They need to clean up their act, and they need to know that parents and legislators are watching.
Absolutely.
And they will make sure that they will be held accountable if they expose children to material that is harmful to them.
And folks, if you have questions about this, you can go to our Facebook page, Truth for Our Time, on our Facebook page. And shortly we will have the website up. Brian has it looking really great. Tamara Scott, you can do info@tamarascott.com. And Michele, how can people contact you?
They can go to the Minnesota Child Protection League, either cplaction.com or mnchildprotectionleague.com. And I would suggest that people sign up for our email updates. We will be providing resources over the summer here to help parents take back their school boards and implement policies that protect children. In addition to that, we have a curriculum watch on the Minnesota Child Protection League website where they can see some of the curriculum, and this is an ongoing project for us, that is offensive, that we deem is potentially harmful to children, and become aware of what curriculum is out there and begin to inquire into their schools, what they are using, and also be aware that sometimes the school will say, we don't have any of that curriculum, and then they will bring in outside sources such as Planned Parenthood to teach some of these courses. And this is another area where we've got to be incredibly vigilant.
Absolutely. And we need to go to a break. We'll come right back after this, and we'll talk about some more of these issues. I have to tell you this. I was up working on research last night, and I had the TV going, just not paying attention to it. One of those talk shows, I don't even know. I've not even heard of this one before. I think it was called Dish, D-I-S-H. But it had several young people on, and honestly, I have to say, some of their views were surprisingly, I was pleased. It wasn't, they too had a sense of justice and protection. But they were talking about the Bachelorette show, and that the Bachelorette folks had gone into a classroom to teach sex ed to students. What kind of a publicity stunt is this? This just shows you our kids are nothing more than guinea pigs and entertainment fodder. Took them into a classroom, and Michele, you know the drill. I know the drill. We saw the banana. We know what comes next. And you could see faces blushing, and you could see even the bachelorettes looking shocked with the conversations that were happening in this classroom. These are our children. I guarantee you, if they were on a park bench and someone in a trench coat with a van in the parking lot were saying these things to your student, whether it's the Iowa LGBTQ conference describing a sex act graphically, or whether it's these guys who are supposed to be on TV, they'd be arrested. If the rest of us tried this and it weren't in a classroom, we'd be arrested, and rightfully so. This is the danger of what's happening in our classroom. Thank you, Alfred Kinsey. If you've not heard of him, you need only do a search for Alfred Kinsey, Kinsey. And anything by Dr. Judith Reisman, Riesman, will give you great information on this as well. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned, because this is our future. Michele, when we come back, maybe we'll talk about, one, I want to talk about the plans you have to help folks take a grassroots action and take back their school boards. But two, I want to talk as well about what the pornography does to the brain, why we're concerned about this. It's not just a morality issue that we are prudish or we're not wanting to talk about. This is actually a safety issue for the future of this country and what this does to our children. We'll be right back after these messages.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
And I'm Tamara Scott. Thank you for staying tuned with us. We're talking about some pretty graphic material. And if you find it unpleasant to listen to or uncomfortable, imagine if you were sitting next to someone of the opposite sex, not in the comfort of your home or your car. Imagine if you were young in a classroom, 10, 8, whatever the age, in a mixed classroom as well. Because this is not by mistake. The sex ed that is being taught to our students today is designed to disturb. It's exactly what it is. And we go to the SAR, Peg Luxick in Common Core, talking about the testing and how those tests are designed to change behavior by the answers. When you take the test, it's a way they change your behavior by the answers. Now, we're not talking about Common Core today, although some of those books that Michele was mentioning as being indecent are on the exemplar reading list in the Common Core materials. So certainly no walk in the park, and though this may not be Common Core, it certainly Common Core has its issues as well. And remember, when it's Common Core, you don't get to choose as a local school district. It's by what is on the test, the national standards, remember. So I want to talk about this SAR. SAR is the technique for sexual attitude restructuring. And that's what we're seeing happening with our students. Not necessarily healthy, not necessarily positive. They're just restructuring the way these kids think about that beautiful relationship that God created between one man, one woman. Michele, you mentioned earlier the laws that we're talking about. One in Nevada may have had a provision in it that nothing should be construed to violate a person's right of conscience. At the same time, you note those are in Canada, and look what's happening in Canada.
Yeah, parents, people who speak out their conscientious objection to same-sex marriage and to Particularly, that is where we're seeing that played out in Canada. These people are being brought before human rights tribunals and being accused and convicted of hate crimes for holding those views. And yet in the Canada law, they say that nothing in that law should be construed to violate a person's rights of conscience. So we know that is not an effective measure, and it doesn't provide a level of protection for people's rights of conscience on these matters.
And we often interview Dawn Stefanowicz out of Canada, and Dawn will tell you she was raised in a home with a homosexual father and loved him and was, in good relationship when he died of AIDS. But she will tell you, at least when we had spoken the last time on the interview, that no one has yet been found innocent in a tribunal. Not one. Michele, let's go to the pornography that these kids are seeing. You're talking about the Perfectly Normal book. It's frightening if folks would really take a chance to go through that. We're seeing the story of this woman taking students to the adult bookstore. We have the LGBTQ conference. Folks in California are talking about the same thing. I've interviewed Representative Robert McDermott out of Hawaii on Pono's Choice, the education for, I think it was 11-year-olds, where again, they were teaching graphically oral to anal activity. And even for me to say this, the left wins, the liberals win, the progressives win, because we're just having to discuss really, really horrible topics to even warn people, to help them understand how graphic it is that our kids, the information that our kids are dealing with. Let's go through pornography. Family Safe Media in 2005 said that the largest users of porn, internet porn, were 12 to 17-year-olds. Dr. Reisman says that 1 in 17 report receiving nude text or nearly nude text. Only 4% students admit sending such text. This is prevalent. Our kids are dealing with things we never ever dreamt they would be dealing with. Michele, what's our concern about this? It's not just that we're prudes. What is the impact of porn on the brain?
Right. I mean, this is a scientific matter. And we can look at, from a developmental point of view, which is what the Minnesota Child Protection League does. And your viewers can go to mnchildprotectionleague.com and see the pictures. We've got them somewhat blurred out, but they can see the pictures from the book It's Perfectly Normal and other curriculum as well that public schools deem appropriate for a 10-year-old. And so if you look at from a scientific point of view, we are on the right side of science here. We're the pro-science voice in America. And we know that we're dealing with both the issues that affect our children in the culture. We should not be having to fight these issues in our schools. The school should be a safe place where children can go and we know that they will not be exposed to things that are harmful to their minds and to their mental well-being. Dr. Geed was a scientist who did some of this research on the brain, and he and others put forth their evidence that the frontal lobe of the developing brain of a teen is not fully developed until they're well into their 20s. This is the part of the brain that you could call the risk-taking self-control center. It's the part of the brain that controls their emotional control, their sense of risk-taking. And when that part of the brain, when a person is exposed to sexually explicit material, this can have a permanent effect on that brain, but they don't have the maturity to be able to handle those images. It's ingrained into the brain, and yet at a time when a young person doesn't have a fully mature sense of risk-taking. I mean, any parent listening to this is probably thinking back to, their child being preteen and teen, and how many of us have had circumstances where we said to ourselves, why did they do that? That was so dumb. Well, the reason is because they don't have the level of maturity. And so exposing them to sexually explicit material at this time is it's not just it's harmful to their brain. It's not just, we're not even just talking morality here. We're
Right.
talking literally mental health.
Right. Right. And I have a few of those stats in front of me. This is from the Kinsey book again. I'm telling you, it's not a great read because of the content, but it's great information that folks need to have. The Playboy and one products of sexual explicit materials encourage illegal juvenile sexual activity and copycat crimes, including incest, child sex abuse, is documented in the peer-approved U.S. Department of Juvenile Justice report by Dr. Reisman. In a study of 36 serial sex murders interviewed by the FBI, 81% admitted using pornography. And if I can, you and I both like to connect the dots for folks when we speak at the trafficking conferences and some of the events we speak across the country. Here's why this matters, Michele. You and I are talking about the effect and the impact it has on the brain. If you go on to what we're seeing now as far as crime, here again in this book, of the 324 homicides in New York in 1930, 1935, 1940, an average of 108 per year, only 17 or 6 per year involved rape of women and children. But the FBI reports in 1995 that New York experienced 4,654 murders, and 3,333 of those were rape murders. It makes a difference. We now see, if I look through the college campuses, the 81% of women who were stalked, this is by nyu.edu, 81% of women who were stalked by a current or former partner were also physically assaulted by that same partner. 1 in 5 college women are raped during their college years. 1 in 4 college-age women report experiences that meet the legal definition of rape or attempted rape. 85% of rapes are committed by a person the victim knows. These 35% of men report some likelihood that they would rape if they were be assured that they would not be caught. These come from exposing kids. We know pornography changes the way men view women, and even women view the intimate, what is to be the intimate role of sexuality. Right in front of me, I have right here from Iowa, the Life Support Network from Informed Choices. Again, talking about HPVs, the Center of Disease Control states that the chances of getting an STD or STI if you have more than one partner in the U.S. is nearly 100%, because just under half of U.S. population has an STD or an STI. The University of Iowa is the number 2 party school in the nation. It is also the number 2 for STIs, that's sexually transmitted infections and sexually transmitted diseases, many of which there are no cures for. 110 million Americans have a sexually transmitted infection. This is not to judge anybody. The beauty of it is that through Jesus Christ, there's redemption. There's often healing. Shelley Lubin, former porn star, talks about her healing from sexual diseases. Michele, I've covered a whole gamut of situations here, and I want to give you time because I know you're going to have to slip out here pretty soon. But I want to give you a moment to touch on that and add your knowledge to that.
Well, even within my own family, I can tell you that, assault has occurred, and these are what we typically might think of, unknown rapist or sexual assault from some stranger is oftentimes not how that occurs. And in the case of my daughter who was assaulted, it was 2 neighbor boys, and we knew who they were. And the average, or the 45% of convicted rapists are under the age of 25. What we're dealing with is a potential epidemic of sexual problems that are occurring in the lives of our young people. And so the concern that we have to bring to this is, what are we exposing them to that is grooming predators and victims?
Right.
And it took me a little time to realize that as a parent, the concern isn't just, or shouldn't be just, that our children may have their defenses broken down by being groomed and through exposure to the material and to conversations and circumstances, which will make them weaker in their ability to defend themselves against becoming victims. The other problem there is that by breaking down these defenses and exposing children to this kind of material, we are also grooming them to be predators.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's there are two sides to that coin. I know it's overwhelming to parents to hear this magnitude of information, but there are things that they can do.
And that's what I want to get to. The lovely segue, Miss Michele. Michele Lentz is my guest today with Child Protection League Action.com, CPLAction.com. Do you have time, before you need to go, do you have time to give us the action that you can put in parents' hands that they can do in their communities?
Sure. The first thing that I think parents need to do is they need to evaluate their own situations within their own family and their children's educational choices and options, because it's going to take us a while. This is a long-term. It took a long time for us to get to this point. It's going to take a while for us to clean up these systems. And so the first concern is, well, how do we take care of our own children? And that's an individual decision that parents need to make based on their resources and their options. Second to that, we have got to start getting involved in our local school districts and start holding them accountable. And it begins with the school board, because they are elected officials. So what the Minnesota Child Protection League and CPL Action is working on is a toolkit that we can make available to local activists, to parents right within their community, where they can begin to have the tools so they don't have to start from scratch. They don't have to be so overwhelmed going into this process. Let's help each other out by providing the tools and resources that are needed to go in and effectively make change within your own school district where your kids go to school.
So we'll stay in contact with you. Again, folks, if you want to know about these kits, to help you with grassroots, to help you with campaigns, to help you vet school board members, to help you possibly find a nominee and a candidate for you that you can run. Because this is still your public school. They still call them public schools. I would tell you they're indoctrination centers run by the government. But it is time you take your schools back. If you're going to have your kids there, by all means, it's the least you can do. Take them back and be in control of what is taught, who teaches it, and what are the safeguards in place to protect your kids? Because we know that kids will not tell you what scares them most. I don't have statistics to prove that or study, but you know it, I know it, we've seen it, we hear it, we did it ourselves as children, whether it was a nightmare, an experience, a person, whatever scared us the most, we didn't tell our parents about it. I don't know why, but they don't. We haven't even talked about the fact that there's a move to legalize pedophilia. Maybe we'll talk about that when we come back from this break. Michele, you need to run, is that correct?
That's right. Thank you, Tamara.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Again, folks, Michele Lentz, Lentz. Michele is with one L, and give them the contact information before you fly.
They can contact me, Michele, at cplaction.com via email. And on our website is a phone number if they want to call. And be sure and sign up for our email updates at either website, because that's the best way for you to stay in touch with us and for us to stay in touch with you about what's happening in Minnesota and across the country.
Michele, thank you for taking time out to teach us today. Thank you for traveling the nation to teach others in what you do. I appreciate it. It's sometimes a very dreary topic to drudge through with research, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing it. We just pray Lord's blessings and protections on you and your mind as you continue, because we are in such a world today that what is good is celebrated as evil, and what is evil is celebrated as good. And gosh, I think I've read that somewhere in an ancient book that is proven true time and time again. We've got to take these breaks and thank our sponsors. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
And thanks for staying tuned. It was an interesting topic today, one that we don't take lightly, one that we don't try to sensationalize when we're on. We just feel the need to tell you it. If you don't know what the dangers are out there, you can't protect your children from them. So just like you listen to the weather to see if you need to put your kids in rain gear or snow gear, you need to understand what they're facing at school. And trust me, it is almost impossible, nearly impossible, for you to know everything that's coming down through that public school right now. And as we've shared with you, too often we know that public schools are teaching kids things before they're ready, topics that are too sophisticated for these kids. Here's the deal. We hear that kids grow up faster today. I've said this on the air recently, and I'll say it again. Really? Explain that to me. Because I remember a time when kids grew up, graduated from high school, got married, may have gone on to college, maybe not. But by age 20, many of them were productive citizens in their community, owned homes, held good jobs, and were raising families. Today, kids are still searching for what they want to do, going to college because they're not sure what else they want to do, and they think that's easier than getting a job and being accountable. And because we've got this fake realm set up that you have to have a degree to be successful, i.e., several of the folks in computer technology have dropped out of school, right? The man who did Facebook, was it Gates that dropped out of school? I can't remember. Or Jobs that dropped out of school. Beyond that, the need for the college degree is overemphasized and unnecessary in many jobs today. But coming back to my point, kids are living in their parents' basement on their parents' insurance up to age 26 now because what? The government says they can. They're not more sophisticated. They don't grow up more quickly. They may be more sophisticated in sin. That's it. And unfortunately, this sin is the baggage that hangs around their neck like a millstone the rest of their lives. Many of them with heartache, heartbreak, and issues that they now have to deal with. You know whose responsibility that is? Yours and mine. Yours and mine. We are the advocate for our children. And it's high time we quit waiting for the government to take care of them, the youth pastor to save them, or the neighbor down the street to help with them. It's not the daycare, it's us. And perhaps rather than have a break on a daycare tax credit, we need tax credits for a stay-at-home parent, where someone who truly loves those children, has an investment in them, will take care of them, know them, hear what they're being taught. That's what we need in the society. And maybe we should recognize women who take time away from their careers to invest in the future, rock that cradle, to influence that next generation, to raise tomorrow's leaders. I long for that day. And if that's you and you'd like to, I'd ask you to pray about it. See what your schedule could be, what your salary might not need to be if you gave up a few things. Kid, I have windows without curtains yet because we just didn't make it a priority in our house to decorate. Our children were our responsibilities. They were our priorities. And I don't regret a minute of it. They're gone now. I can buy my drapes if I need to. I still haven't. The important thing was my children. Imagine if we cared about our kids. They're not just something that we have as a consequence of sex. They're the most beautiful gift we have on treasure, the earthly treasure that we can take to heaven with us if we teach them how to get there on their own. But instead, we have kids that are hurting, growing into adults that are hurting others. It's time to stop the madness. We've proven that because it's science with a capital S, it means nothing. It means little if it's not accurate and true. And we know, as our founding fathers know, that anything that does not stand in nature's law or God's law will not stand on its own either. We talked just briefly about the possibility of legalizing pedophilia. I'm not threatening, this isn't the red heron they always talk about, but I believe in 1973, this was already taken off the list of disorders along with homosexuality and I think it's sadism. So it's already being discussed. In 2011, it was discussed at either the American Sociologist or Psychologist Association. It's being discussed. You see the desensitization of several of these issues yourself in sitcoms, in dramas, when they're talking about things that are just odd, that you would not want for your child. And yet we're supposed to accept it now as a lifestyle choice. If something's a lifestyle choice to be celebrated, why does it need protective laws? Makes no sense to me. If it needs protective laws from discrimination, then it probably isn't something that needs celebrated. I want to touch on something else. We're talking about the hope that we have. You're it. Quit waiting for politicians. In Iowa, we're first in the nation. We've got politicians around all the time. I am politically active because as a Christian, we're called to be good stewards of the liberties God gave us. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But don't wait for DC to fix the problem. Because here's the truth. If it were fixed in your home, we wouldn't be dealing with most of these issues. If we fix the family, the budget and the debt would fix itself, because many of the programs we're dealing with, whether it's welfare, Medicaid, Medicare, some of those other programs as far as low-income families, the entitlement programs would not be necessary if the homes were healthier. And here's the deal. Until we fix it in our house, we will not fix it in the state house or the courthouse. Until we fix it in God's house and address these issues honestly, accurately, according to the word, we won't have them right in the state house, the schoolhouse, the courthouse, the jailhouse. We've got to return to things that we know that are true and sturdy, not trendy, that leave us feeling dirty. Kind of like that little rhyme. I'm going to go now. Ryan, do you have the clip pulled up? And I apologize, we couldn't get Jim Sedlak on today. We'll save him for another day. He has a book called Parent Power. You can go to stopp.org, stopp.org, and you can order that. There's a green bar at the top, and I think it has references and tools, and if you just go down, you'll see it in there. But let's go now to the clip with Governor Nikki Haley out of South Carolina.
We want to invite everyone of all ages, all ethnic backgrounds, not just from South Carolina, but all over the country, to come together and to pray that we get strengthened, to pray that we remember that we're not in charge, and to pray for peace. And so as we do that, we're asking that everyone come together June 13th, 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, no admission. This is a time of faith. This is a time of prayer. prayer. This is a time to come together and not do anything with government, not to do anything with politics, but go back to our core convictions, those things that we know that are true, those things that we know that are right, and to do it as people of South Carolina and of this country that will bring us together and make us strong. So I ask, if you have any information or questions that you want to know about, go to www.theresponse.sc.com. I will be there. We look forward to seeing you there. Let's all get together for this special day of prayer. See you soon. God bless.
I encourage you to attend June 13th, 10 to 4 p.m. I am planning to attend. I'm going to do my best to take a small group of people with me. And I was able to attend the one in Louisiana by Governor Bobby Jindal in January. It was a tremendous, tremendous event, seeing 6,000 people come together in prayer for our nation. And as Governor Haley says, this isn't just about her state. This is a call to prayer for our nation. And for those of you who want to panic and say, keep your God out of my government, understand you wouldn't have your government without my God. Whether it's George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, or even our founding fathers long before, this nation was founded upon Judeo-Christian principles. And getting away from that is what's causing us so much grief and so much harm and so much loss of our liberties and our freedoms today. Here's a prayer that someone sent me. These cards of prayers. I tell you what, this was such a blessing. It was it was not expected. This person had no obligation to do this. It was not my birthday. There was no reason. Out of the goodness of their heart, they sent these prayer cards to me and a prayer shawl. And I tell you, just to talk about it, I feel so comforted and loved, and the Holy Spirit just resting about me, just that someone took that time to pray over me and give me this shawl. But here's this prayer I just happened to bring with me today, thinking I might read, and what a coincidence, or a guidance as we call it. It fits right in. Father, we come to you to pray for our nation, the United States of America. How you have blessed us through the years. We rightly sing, America, America, God shed his grace on thee. Yet we see trouble in our culture today. We see breakdown of the family, crippling addictions. We just talked about those earlier. Random acts of horrific violence. Lord, we need your help in America. In recent days, we have done our best to remove your word and your counsel from our courtrooms, classrooms, and culture. It seems, as President Lincoln once said, that we have forgotten God. But Lord, you have not forgotten us. You can bless us, help and revive our country again. Scripture tells us that the righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Lord, in your mercy, we ask you that you would exalt our country again. We have had a number of great awakenings in America. We've experienced times of refreshing, revivals that change not only the spiritual, but also the moral landscape. As the psalmist said, will you not revive us again so that your people may rejoice in you? This is our prayer for America today. Send a mighty spiritual awakening that we will turn the hearts of men and women, boys and girls, back to you. You've told us if we humble ourselves and pray, seek your face, turn from our wicked ways, that you will forgive our sins and heal our land. Forgive us today, Lord, and heal this troubled land, that we may love you so much. We ask this in Jesus' name. What a perfect ending. You've been told some really strong graphic information today, but you are responsible, and you now have the capability to do something with it and make a difference because of it. And I encourage you to do that so that your kids aren't being raised with that sin we talked about before they ever get a chance to know or make the decisions on their own. I'm Tamara. You've been encouraged. Now never be complacent.